everyone, this is Natalie from Champion of Coins Tarot, and I'm here today to do my first official deck review with the China Tarot, published by Los Scarabeo with artwork by Durjen. Oh my goodness. Ever since I have joined YouTube, this has been one of my most requested deck review videos, and I have worked with it this month. I have done some journaling with some of the keywords and concepts that I have for the card this month, and I just continuously fall in love every time that I use it. So I'm very, very excited to be able to share it with all of you today. Before I begin, I just want to talk a little bit about the history behind this deck. This deck was originally self-published by the artist Durjen in her native China, and it was published under the name The Chinese Ladies Tarot. It was later picked up for mass production and for world distribution by Los Scarabeo in 2006. A couple of years ago, the artist passed away, and so this deck has become, in a sense, her legacy. It's become revered as one of the most concise and one of the most beautiful collections of her artwork. So I'm very honored to have it. I am always on the hunt for multicultural decks, especially mass-produced ones, because I'm a college student. I'm kind of a starving one, considering my major, but I really do appreciate artists who make decks to honor their own cultures, who represent their own history. And I think it's very important to support those, because that's the only way that we are going to be able to see more, is if we create an environment within the community that appreciates diversity and that honors that uniqueness and that wonderful history that every artist brings to the table. So, without further ado, I am going to go ahead and just dive into it. It contains 78 cards, and as some of you may have noticed, it has unillustrated pip cards. This was an intentional decision on the part of the artist, and I believe the pips were reworked to feature these lovely backgrounds by Los Scarabeo, which I think adds a very nice touch. So I'm glad that I have this edition. The backs of the cards feature dragons, and it's this lovely, rich jade green cover. I really want to actually edge this deck in a lovely green because I think it would just finish it off so, so beautifully. The front of the cards feature this gorgeous light, can't think of the specific name for this light green color. Almost like a pear, perhaps, but it's very, very nice. I think it flows very well with the cards. And being that this is an older Los Scarabeo deck, it does have the name of each card printed in multiple languages. This actually doesn't bother me. I think that this makes tarot accessible to people who don't have English as a first language. And I mean, I don't mind it. This deck is so image-centric. All of the cards that are fully illustrated feature portraits of people in traditional Chinese garb, in traditional costumes and traditional fashion from different historical periods and from different religious festivals and celebrations. So that doesn't detract at all, I think, from that. That's not what I focus on when I look at these cards. They also do have the yin and the yang printed in blue as a further frame for the images, which I think really draws the eye in. So the borders aren't too big of a problem for me, but I think if you were to trim them off, it might affect the backs of the cards because, yeah, I think it would cut off parts of the dragons, but it would still be symmetrical. The guidebook is, well, it's not really a guidebook. It's the traditional Los Scarabeo fare. I have a paper clip here to separate the pages that are printed in different languages. So you only get 14 pages per language. However, it comes with 3 different spreads, which I love. Typically, Los Scarabeo decks only come with one, and I like that there are multiple ones to play around with. And I'm sorry in advance for bumping the camera around. But there is a spread of the 5 forces, which examines the past, the present, the future, favorable and unfavorable elements. There's the Tai Chi 2 spread, which examines a situation from 2 different vantage points. So the first 3 represent, or the first side of the spread represents one perspective and one possible solution, and the second represents the other, which I quite love. And then there's the spread of changes here, which is arranged vertically, and it looks at strong points, weak points, possibilities of outside aid, external obstacles, advantages or results that are opening up, and then finally sacrifices, things that have to be let go of or the things that have to be compromised in order to actualize the goal. So I've had experience working with these spreads, and I quite like them. They are not in my typical rotation of the spreads that I gravitate towards for myself and for friends, but I do really appreciate them, and this helped me to really get to know the deck and to get to know what kind of questions it was well suited for. And then, of course, it goes into keywords for all the upright meanings for the major arcana and for the minors. It keeps the traditional elemental associations for each suit. So chalices are water for emotions, pentacles are earth for the physical world, wands are spirit and fire, and swords are intellect and air. It also includes basic numerology, and it includes its own system for interpreting the courts, which I think is very interesting, and I'll get into that later. But it views the court cards as being a family with a daughter, a son, a mother, and a father. And I quite like that metaphor for approaching them. And I think that artistically, it works absolutely beautifully. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you the majors for this deck. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about why I was so drawn to it. First things first, the artwork is absolutely stunning. Just there's so much detail. I believe that she used real models, and she also used herself in certain cards, which I think is absolutely lovely. And I got this deck because I really wanted a deck that I could do path working with. I thought that it would be wonderful to be able to step into each card and to talk directly in meditation with these characters, with these archetypal figures. And I haven't actually been able to do that quite yet. I've still been working with it on a very kind of basic level, which, I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to explain it, because right out of the box, and this is, by the way, this Chariot card is the only card that has a background that doesn't just feature one particular person. As you can see, he's running through this mountain pass. There is an army advancing behind him. So this is one of the few cards that has environmental context, which I quite like. Anyways, I feel like right out of the box, I was able to just read with this deck straight, and that I didn't require a lot of study. And that's mostly how I've been using it, is just intuitively, just going off of what the images are telling me, going off of the words and the associations that come to mind, going off of just what I hear in my head when I look at them. And that's worked very, very well. I think that even though it's focused on portraiture, there's still a lot of traditional tarot elements that you can draw off of. For example, in the wheel card here, we see a woman who is tumbling downwards. We have the image of the dragon superimposed upon her. And we also have representations of some of the Chinese zodiac signs, which I think is lovely. I think this card has the traditional elements of surrendering to fate, of surrendering to outside forces, and writing out the different cycles, writing out the different rhythms of life. So there's still a lot that you can draw from, which again is why I have been able to just work with this deck straight. But there are also a lot of new elements. There are also a lot of culturally specific elements, which I think is quite lovely. For example, the Death card features traditional costumes, features the traditional fashion and the traditional elements that actors would wear on stage and that priests and community members would wear during religious festivals, which I think is absolutely lovely. It speaks to this primal fear, it speaks to this intimate understanding of life and of death. There's also Temperance, in which it features a woman who is giving an incense offering. And so I feel like it talks about, the act of supplication, the act of making offerings and sacrificing and putting in the effort, putting in the intention in order to balance different forces, both external and internal within your own life. So I think that it adds a really special lens to the Rider-Waite-Smith system. Here is the Devil, which I think is so lovely. I love the mask, the horns, the wings, just the abstract nature of the background. I do feel a sense of oppression. I feel a sense of weight and a sense of guilt. Like, again, just the traditional aspects that we think of when we think of the devil, when we think of being chained to our vices, or when we think of being weighed down and being made slaves to our own perceptions of ourselves and the falsities that we believe in. So I think that's quite lovely. The Tower. The stars. This is just such a gorgeous image. She looks so peaceful. The moon is just another lovely cultural example. This makes me think of the pinups and the advertisements in Shanghai during the 1920s and the 1930s. So I think that nod to that kind of art is very lovely here. The sun is so radiant. And just the color symbolism as well, I think, lends so much to the artwork of this deck. Judgment. A much more soft and a much more inviting figure, I think, than is present on a lot of Judgment cards. If you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you know that this is the one card that I struggle with the most and that I have difficulty relating to myself. And this one, I have no problem with. I feel so comfortable with it and with her. And it's one of my favorite cards in the entire deck, actually. And then the World. Again, we have traditional zodiac symbols and traditional associations. She has a ceremonial garb. It's absolutely lovely. So that's a look at the artwork in the majors. And for the suits, I'm not going to go through every single card just because, again, this deck is very pippish. For the chalices, we have a gold and a green color scheme, which I think is very lovely. And I used this deck as kind of my sample or as my, example in my How I Read Pip Cards video, which I'll also link in the description, because I feel like a lot of the commentary that I've heard about this deck is that people are attracted to the artwork. They think that it's absolutely lovely and they can see themselves working with that system. But then they realize that it is a pip deck and they get turned off. And I feel like there's still a lot of intention. There's still a lot of tips and a lot of ways that you can make this deck work for you. And in my experience, this doesn't detract from it at all. I actually appreciate that the minors are so sparse because there's so much detail and so much personality in the majors and in the court cards that it creates a very nice balance to work with. So here are the courts in the Chalice's suit. Here's the knave. Again, all of the knaves are women. They are teenage girls. They're the daughters. And here, one thing that I actually really, really like is that the chalices are depicted not as being cups, but as being helmets. And so I feel like it's so beautiful. I think it speaks to this transformative element of water, that of opening up and of allowing emotional transformation to take place, allowing yourself to be emotionally vulnerable, which I really love. Here's the knight, the queen. I just, these are some of my favorite court cards. They're just so expressive and they're so lovely. And one thing that I will point out with the family system is that I feel like there is a lot of resemblance. I feel like you can either read the knight as being the son, or it could be the younger version of the king. And the same thing with the queen and with the knave of chalices is I feel like you can read them as being the younger version, the immature version, the version that has the potential to transform and to become this figure of wisdom and of guidance. So I quite like these connections between these two court cards and between the system. It's helped me to really work with the courts in a different way. And again, it's helped me to get a good taste and a good feel for the personalities of these figures. And this is a deck that, like, every time I read with it, I just discover something new. I discover something new that I hadn't considered before. Here are the pentacles. So this is very earthy. We get much more browns and golds and muted tones, which is lovely. Here we have the Knave of Pentacles, and she is so lovely, so playful. I feel like this speaks so much to the opportunity and to just the brainstorming aspect of this card, of figuring out who you are and what you want to do. She has her resources around her. She has her pentacles, and she's thinking about how she can use them. She's thinking about how she can actively engage in the world, which I love. Here is the Knight. My man, my signifier. I love the Knight of Pentacles so much. And this is one of my favorite cards in the deck. I just love the way that he is depicted here. Here's the Queen. So again, the parallels between the Knave and the Queen in this deck is just so lovely. Because here we have somebody who is thinking and is by themselves. They're isolated. They're not sure how to engage in the physical world yet. And then here we have the transition to the Queen, in which she is standing radiant before her subjects. She's become a leader. She's come into her own power, and she's figured out how to use her resources to help other people. She's figured out how to be a light for others, which is just so stunning and so lovely. And then we have the King of Pentacles. And this is security in yourself and that confidence in yourself, which I just love. I love this deck so much. And again, like, just talking about it and just looking at this images again on camera, it's so special. And I think I'm going to be doing an updated video soon when I do get around to path working with it and to really exploring this deck in a much more mystical capacity. Here are the swords. So we have bronze, we have some reds, which I think is lovely. And then these courts are very special too, because I feel like they are very playful and they aren't as severe, they aren't as rigid. I feel like they're quite witty and they are quite just engaging, which I really love. So here's the Knave. She's learning how to utilize her mind, learning how to just, again, come into her own power and to figure things out. We have the Knight, which I love the movement. I love, you can really get the sense that his mind is going at 1,000,000 miles per hour and that he's racing with so much inspiration. And here's the queen, which she looks so funny. She looks so witty. Again, like I feel like she would be someone very relatable. And she has a lot of power. Like she's leaning on her sword quite casually. Like she's sure of herself. And she's very open and she's willing to engage in debate with other people, which I love. And then the king, so gorgeous. Whoops. And then the last one, of course, is the wands, and this one's very blue and very red, which I love. And these are ceremonial symbols that are used during religious festivities, which speaks again to that spiritual aspect, that spiritual nature of the card. Here's the knave. She is stunning. This is one of my favorite knave or pages of wands. I just think she looks so serene. We have like the rays of light that are hitting her face, like that newness, that excitement. The knight, queen, and the king. I love this deck so much. I can't get enough of it. So to kind of close out, I wanted to discuss some of my own personal experiences and what I feel like the energy of this deck is like. I feel like this is so fiery. I feel like there is a religious aspect to it. There is a very spiritual aspect. But it's very challenging. And I mean that in the best possible way. This deck makes me look at things in a new way. It makes me just find new ways to connect. It draws parallels between the outer and the inner world for me. And this is a deck that it might sound kind of weird, but I work with the saints a lot, and my patron saint is Saint Martha of Bethany. And I feel like this deck is how I connect with her. I feel like she is with me when I'm reading with this deck, and that's something that I don't experience with every deck. I don't experience a really deep sense of spiritual connection, like I'm really tapping into a spirit or that I'm really tapping into a facet of the divine. But this deck is one that opens so many doors. It's so deep and it's so powerful. Just talking about it and looking at these images, it makes me so emotional because it's so beautiful and it's so sacred to me. And I feel like it's a deck that is very versatile. I read with other people with it. One of my tarot reading best friend in real life, like she requests readings from me with this deck a lot, and it works absolutely beautifully for her as well. It's a deck that is suited again to meditation, which is what I really want to dig in and really explore this year. But it's also suited for just any question under the sun. I mean, I've asked this deck about like things with college. I've kind of like gossiped and like worked, well, not really gossiped because I don't spy on people with tarot, but I've like worked through my own perceptions of other people with this deck. And I've also just done shadow work with it. It's an absolute joy to use. And this is a deck where everything flows together. And the combination of the detailed portraits and the pip style imagery in the minors, it works. And there's so much intention, so much love, and I'm just so grateful again to the artist. And I'm so grateful for Lo Scarabeo for preserving her work and for bringing it to a new audience. And I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I am going to leave you there for today. Thank you so much for watching my review video of this deck. If you have this deck or if it's on your wish list, please let me know, and I would love to have a conversation with you about it. I feel like I say that in every single video, like I want to talk with people, but I do. I can't get enough deck lust in my life. So thank you so much again, and I will talk to you soon in another video. Bye!